Look who it is, everyone. It's only me.
Back to episode 7, and beware spoilers. Galadriel wakes up covered in ash, avoids the bad CGI horse on fire, and calls out for Halbrand and Elendil.
Halbrand! Elendil!
Keep that in mind, it's important later. So Galadriel finds Theo as he calls out "Mother" in a thick faux northern accent. Mother! And it reminds me of the actor Pete Postlethwaite in the Sean Bean series Sharp. If you've never seen it, it's quite good. It's about a group of soldiers fighting in the Napoleonic Wars. If you want something to watch that's actually good, maybe give it a try. So Galadriel finds Theo, and she just seems to wander off after that. There are people around her crying out in pain. There's a dude 20 feet to her right, screaming and on fire. She's surrounded by the dead and wounded, but she doesn't stay and help. What the hell is going on with Galadriel? We later find out that her and Theo got separated from everyone else. So from what's in the show, it strongly appears that she just walked off. That's right, there are loads of people crying out in pain and coughing around her, and for unspecified reasons, she just sods off and goes for a walk. That's right. As far as I can tell, she just wanders off camera and disappears. Because in this show, as soon as something's off camera, it doesn't exist any longer. For some reason, her and Theo just left the village and left the wounded and injured behind, including Theo's mother. And this is a theme with Galadriel at this point. Remember one of her men that she almost left to die in a blizzard in episode 1. Maybe if she'd stayed behind, she could have helped Isildur. Maybe a roof wouldn't have fallen on his head. He was maybe 30 metres away from her at the time. Now this habit she has of leaving people behind to die, I'm just going to ask for certainty, are we 100% sure that Galadriel isn't a Harfoot? So how could they have done this better? Amazon could have had the fire and smoke so intense that Galadriel was forced to leave and physically couldn't help the people. Instead of just finding Theo, she could have found him injured, maybe with his leg trapped. This would have given her an opportunity to show heroism. She could have saved him and then been shot at by an orc archer, forcing her to leave to protect him and leaving her unable to help anyone else. Any of this would have been better than her just pissing off and leaving behind the dead and wounded. We cut back to Theo and Galadriel later, and they're hiding from orcs. Now she doesn't want to kill orcs any longer, saying her and Theo have neither position nor reinforcement to take them on. She wants to go to the Southlands alone, just a matter of a few episodes ago, to find orcs. Now here they are, and she doesn't want to fight them any longer. She's been looking for them for centuries. Now she's just not bothered. Showrunners, have you forgotten what your character's core motivations are? Do you need me to remind you? Because they seem to change from scene to scene. How could they have done this better? Amazon could have had Galadriel injured during the explosion, forcing her to hide from the orcs. Or Theo could have been injured, forcing her to avoid a fight in order to protect him. Either of these would have been better than having Galadriel change her personality between episodes. We cut back to the Númenóreans, and the Queen has caught up with the main group. Elendil didn't stay and look for his son for some reason, but he asks the Queen about his son. He maybe gets told that his son is dead. Presumably, if this does happen, he gets told it off camera. I guess that's just not important enough, huh? The scene where the father finds out that his son is dead. What precisely it is that he gets told, why he doesn't go back to look. It's all off camera. One of the few interesting scenes in the entire show, and you do it off camera. Are you doing this on purpose, Amazon? Are you trying to make this show deliberately bad as a tax write-off or as a scam? Is this your version of A Springtime for Hitler? It's no secret that I don't think this show is going well, but it's not your fault, guy playing Elendil. Some of you actors are genuinely doing your best. We go back to Galadriel for another prolonged scene of walking and talking. Galadriel is now against killing orcs, apparently. She says killing orcs is not good. It darkens the heart, she says, to call dark deeds good. It gives a place for evil to thrive inside us, that every soldier must be mindful. So killing orcs is bad. Torturing and genocide are still a-okay for Galadriel, though, I guess. When that volcano happened, did she get hit in the head with a large piece of rock? She seems to have a completely different personality than only an episode ago. Because make no mistake, during this episode, characters will routinely forget their core motivations, like they're suffering from amnesia. We also learn that Galadriel's husband Celeborn is apparently dead, and God only knows how they're going to try and make that work. He's alive in the Peter Jackson films that come chronologically after this. What was the issue with her being happily married anyway, Amazon? What's the problem? Why are you being weird? What's so wrong with Galadriel being married that you had to write her husband out of the story? Maybe you can explain it to me, Amazon, because I genuinely have no idea. Theo blames himself for what happened because he gave the orcs the Keyblade. Galadriel seems to blame herself for what happened because she led the Númenóreans there, and I have no idea what this character's motivation is supposed to be at this point. Because if Galadriel cared and blamed herself for what happened to the Númenóreans that got killed by the volcano, why the hell did she leave the village and not help them? But in reality, all of this is Arondir's fault for not taking the Keyblade and running in the first place. Because of his dumb plan, everybody should have died, and it was just dumb luck that they didn't. It was only the arrival of the Númenóreans that saved them, and they didn't even know that help was coming. So I looked it up, and in plot terms, we're getting towards the War of the Last Alliance. Between then and the final defeat of Sauron is about 3,000 years. That's right, the entire continent is going to be in terror and darkness for 3,000 years because Arondir was a dumbass who wanted to get laid. It gets worse when you realise that Arondir has been stationed there for 79 years, and that means he was there before Bronwyn was even born. He watched her grow up from a little girl. You didn't think this through, did you, Amazon? This is sounding less like a romance and more like Arondir is a creepy groomer. Later on, Galadriel and Theo get back to the Númenórean camp. She walks in like she owns the place and doesn't even ask about Halbrand and if he's alive. She doesn't ask about Elendil either, and both of these men were friends who saved her life on 2 different occasions. She doesn't ask about Isildur either, who she talked to on the boat and knows full well is Elendil's son. Later on, she meets with the Queen and sees Elendil looking heartbroken and angry and like he wants to burst into tears, and she doesn't even bother to ask him what's wrong. She doesn't ask him about his son Isildur either. Meanwhile, Isildur's horse is going crazy and they have to release it. It runs off. Now, we know Isildur's alive because he can't die. He's needed in the story later. He can't be killed by a roof. I have a sneaking suspicion that Isildur's horse is going to find him. And it sucks to be Isildur, I guess. His friends and his dad left him for dead, but at least his horse cares about him. Captain Elendil watches the horse go and says, I should have left the elf in the sea. And finally he catches on. Galadriel is an arsehole. Later on, Galadriel talks to Bronwyn and says she needs to report what's happened to the Elven King. Bronwyn then says, but what about our king? Has nobody told you? So that part at the start, where Galadriel shouted for Halbrand and Elendil, that seems to have been the sum total extent of how much she searched for her friends before she gave them up for dead. She's then told, off camera again, that Halbrand is alive. And yes, someone had to tell Galadriel because she couldn't be asked to ask. It turns out that Halbrand is badly wounded, so Galadriel takes him to be healed by the elves and give a report to Gil-galad the Elven King. She also leaves her sword behind for no reason whatsoever, and Arondir stays with Bronwyn to make house and doesn't go with her, which makes no sense on any level, as it's clearly very important for this message to get through. So what are Halbrand and Galadriel going to use if they get attacked on the way? Harsh language? Halbrand is wounded and Galadriel has nothing but a dagger. And they all have, what was it? Oh yeah, neither position nor reinforcement, so they'll just be screwed, I guess. A sword would clearly be helpful in case of trouble, as would a seasoned elven warrior. But no, instead Arondir is staying with Bronwyn for reasons. So Galadriel is going to ride and take Halbrand from what is now Mordor to the elves before he dies from infection. The problem with this is that Lindon is on the other side of the continent. Now, handily for me, Amazon provided a map of the world that they're writing in, including a scale in the top right here. Oh boy, was that a mistake. Because from that, I can show how far on their map is 200 leagues. So I can make a yardstick of 200 leagues with that. And it's about 2 of them to Eriador and 3 to Lindon. So it's about 400 leagues to Eriador and 600 leagues to Lindon. And that's as the crow flies. 200 leagues is just above 1100 kilometres. So that's 2200 kilometres to Eriador and 3300 kilometres to Lindon. So I looked it up, and an average horse can apparently go 80 kilometres in one day. Allegedly, most horses will need several days of rest after a few days of consecutive riding. So I'm going to be kind, and let's say the horses don't need to rest, which in reality they would. So that's 1100 kilometres divided by 80 kilometres per day. So to go 200 leagues would take around 14 days. So if they're going to ride to Eriador, it's going to take them about a month. And Lindon will be a month and a half. Longer if they need to rest the horses. If the horses need 2 days rest for every 2 days of riding, getting Halbrand to Lindon will take in the region of 3 months. So I hope that festering wound isn't that bad. But let's face it, what am I thinking? They're just going to teleport again, aren't they? Is this supposed to be a comedy show? Because it's a lot funnier than She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So maybe that's why Arondir is staying. Maybe he doesn't want to leave Bronwyn for the next 6 months to go on a trip to Lindon. And he isn't in a mood to be heroic, I guess. He just has better things to do, I suppose. I'm not sure I've seen anything else get the concept of heroism quite as wrong as this show does. Screw duty, I suppose. Why bother being an elven soldier and trying to stop the ultimate evil when you can get laid with a hot MILF instead?
Look who it is, everyone. It's only me.